All right, Victoria, let's jump into our marriage strategy of the week. I love this.
Yeah, I love this one. This is one of our favorites and something that we've been trying to apply ever since we've been married. I know sometimes it's a challenge, but
It's a worthy endeavor that we
yeah,
don't always meet, but sometimes.
one of the incredible man of God that married us, Pastor Tim, of course, it was Ryan's a youth pastor as well, and he just really mentored him. He told us about the 777 rule. You want to tell them about it?
Yeah, well, it's pretty simple, and you don't have to follow this exactly, but it's a good guideline to make sure that you're intentional about spending quality time with your spouse, right? So the 777 rule works like this. Every 7 days, you need dedicated face-to-face time with your spouse.
Hmm.
It would be great if that was a date every single week. We know that's not always going to happen, but every 7 days, you need quiet, uninterrupted, undistracted time with your spouse. We like to call it table time.
Yeah.
So it can be at home, it could be sitting on the back porch, it could be on a formal date, going to a restaurant or to a park or whatever. But you are getting that undistracted time with your spouse, no technology. If it's after bed for the kids, and so you can get alone, great. If you need to get a sitter, that too. But you need every 7 days to have that FaceTime with your spouse. Every 7 weeks, we want to challenge you to either have a staycation or go away at least for one night with your spouse. It could be camping. It could be at a luxury
But
hotel,
it could
an
be something,
expensive hotel.
whatever you want. Yeah.
You could send the kids away, as long as it's, one night where you are alone with your spouse every 7 weeks. That's like once every 2 months.
Hmm.
And then finally, every 7 months, you need an extended, dedicated time with your spouse. And for us, that is to focus in on our vision for the new year. It's always around October, our anniversary. We do our best to get away, at least for a couple days, or we have a staycation where we're talking about vision, our marriage, how can we grow. But that 777 principle kind of rings true every 7 days, every 7 weeks, every 7 months
Hmm.
or so. But at least in your mind, there's a metric to go by every 7.
Yeah.
And so it may not be every 7 days, maybe it's every other week for you. And then maybe it's once a quarter, and then maybe it's once a year. But it's just an activity to get your mind in a place where you're being intentional about dates and quality time.
And I know for some people it may sound overwhelming, especially if you don't normally do this, but it doesn't have to be expensive. Like Ryan said, you can stay home, make a little charcuterie board, sit on the couch. You can go in the park, have picnic. During these fall times, they're actually doing movies. So maybe look up some movies. It's about just having an intentional time spending together, having quality time. Even sometimes, maybe it doesn't mean that you're having conversation, but you're actually cuddling or sitting next to each other. Those things are very important. This is why we see couples become more disconnected whenever they don't spend that time together. So if you can keep that in your mind, 777 rule, you can kind of keep yourself in check and say, hey, it's been a while. It's been several weeks. We haven't went on a date or we haven't been alone. And you would notice, you see that in your marriage. You'll notice the ebbs and flows, and maybe your spouse is a little bit more on edge, or you're a little bit more on
Right.
edge. So I think that will be a good indicator for you to put that on the calendar, pencil that in. And I also would like to add that all the conversations that we've talked about in regards to writing a vision, for those of you who say, well, that's expensive, you need to pencil that into your vision board. If it means an overnight stay, be intentional about it. In 7 weeks, we need to set money aside. So that means every week or every 2 weeks, we are setting money aside from our paycheck to be intentional about our marriage. And the same goes for that extended period of time, every 7 months, maybe 3 to 4 days. So setting that money aside and writing that on your vision will help you to also plan ahead so that it doesn't feel overwhelming and it doesn't feel like it's last minute, but it's very intentional.
Yes, and get creative with it. If you don't have the extra budget to be able to do it, there are always ways. If you can't hire a sitter, right? Are your kids in school right now? Is there another couple that you guys can work together and trade off kids, once a month? There's all different kinds of ways that you can make it happen. For a while, Victoria and I were using lunch breaks on Thursdays when the kids were at school to get together. And if that grows stale, you can stop and try something different. But it's just being intentional about the quality time that you're spending with your spouse that's undistracted. And
Mhm.
that's the 777 rule. And that's our marriage strategy of the week.